What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Cold Rush, your favorite podcast in the world. Uh, my name's Caspian. This
I'm
is,
the Cold Rush. This is Eric Wiegand.
and this is episode 3. So I'd like to think each time we're getting 33% better. So expect that to continue to improve. And today we are going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, cold calling. Ice cold calling, that is. And how do you break that ice with some excellent cold calling tips? Um, yeah. Eric, you excited to get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on, one thing. I'm thinking, should we do like full intros? Just
Oh,
because
sure.
like people might be. Should we? Do you want to just like start it over?
Sure, sure.
I'm just the only. That's the only thing I was thinking of is like credibility. But
Yeah. So
let's
say,
let's just
do you
start.
want to do you want to do that? You do the main intro. I don't care. Like, you do the main intro and then just pass to me when you want
Okay.
to.
All right. Fine. Welcome, everybody, to episode 3. This is the Cold Rush, and you have with you a couple of experts here. Hopefully, you can learn something today. We're covering the cold calling. I'm Eric Wiegand. A little bit about me. Started as an SDR, went all the way to sales leader, founder, RevOps, automation, you name it, I've done it. And perfect counterpart to that is my good buddy, Caspian Lewke.
Yep. Yeah, Caspian, former SDR. I actually went from SDR to sales engineer, and then from sales engineer to account executive. So SDR to SE to AE. If you name an acronym, I've probably spent a little bit of time in that role. So yeah, super pumped to be here and get into all things cold outbounding related. Eric, you want to tell the people what we're going to get into today?
Yeah, absolutely. But before I do that, I should also say that Caspian is right now number 1 as of this recording at his company. So you're learning from the best. Came from rags to riches. Here he is, Caspian Lewke in the flesh. Today we're going to go through a couple of different topics when it comes to cold calling, right? So what kind of mindset should you be in? What kind of structure should you have? What to include, what to avoid, how to handle objections. We're running the full gamut today. And so we, are really excited to deliver this to you from our years of experience doing it, as well as, what we've learned from the A players on the teams that we're on. And, we really look forward to your feedback on all of these episodes as usual. Tell us what you want to hear about. So if there's anything that we don't dig into quite enough for you, let us know. Awesome. So let's kick this off with mindset, Caspian. What do you think is the best way to approach a cold call? How do you get hyped up? Like, give me your award-winning strategy here.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a couple things to bear in mind. Number one, and I know different people do different things. What I found was most successful in terms of prepping for a cold calling block and in terms of like overcoming that initial fear is to make it seem like the easiest thing in the world. And what I mean by that is, especially when I was at Gong, or if you're at a company where you all have a call recording software of some form, I would set up a filter for cold calls that booked meetings. And then before my cold calling block, I would just listen on repeat to different calls that booked meetings. Number one, you are learning what's working, right? You're learning what's resonating with prospects. But number two, it makes it feel like it's inevitable that when you get someone on the line that you are going to be able to book them. And so for me, again, there's the tactical part of truly learning what is working for other people. But arguably more important than that, it really is the mindset where you are telling yourself, wow, if I get someone on this phone, I am going to absolutely crush this cold call and there's no way I'm not going to book a meeting. So that worked super well for me. I'm curious for you, Eric. What kind of worked for you when you were calling?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things that work for me. So first, it's like, let me put on some music, right? There's like my pre-cold call ritual, which is like, let me put on some music, some aggressive stuff, right? Get me like amped up, ready to go. Because there's nothing worse than getting on and like dreading or fearing the pickup. That's the worst frame of mind that you should be in, right? You should be confident. You should be like, man, I just can't wait to talk to somebody. The next thing I do is I can't make cold calls sitting down. I have to be standing up. And, I've thought about it for a while. And I feel like when the objections come, because I'm standing, I'm using physical motions to like get around it. They'll be like, I don't have time right now. And I'll go like, woo, you don't have time? Like, let me address that, right? And it's like, it's it's stupid, but there's something that's like your mind and your body are connected. So if you have that flow, if you have that rhythm, if you're standing up, you kind of like can get to it, right? And then the other thing is like, as you're going through this, just having the confidence to know that like you might be interrupting their day. However, you are pitching a product and hopefully you have something that you do believe in and you do think can like help somebody accomplish their goals a lot easier. You can get on the calls and have that confidence to say like, this is going to interrupt you briefly to help you to eternity, right? Or however long you're using this. If they really love it, they might be taking that tool from company to company. This might be the tool that they use for the rest of their careers, right? And so having that confidence is just like really important. And one other thing that I think you talked about, which I'd love to hear more about, is like right now with the connection rates being so low, right? Even if you're using a parallel dialer, it can be like, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes before you get something if you're not using a parallel dialer, like Nooks or, Orem or anything like that. If you're not using that, then you could go all day without it. I'd love to know, how do you prepare yourself? Because it's easy to get psyched up. But then if you're waiting, and then there's the connection, like how do you overcome that to be actually ready for that call when it comes? Because I know a lot of folks who I've worked with and who have been on my teams are like, it's jarring to be like, wow, somebody actually picked up.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. And I think that for me, I benefit a lot. And like one of my strong suits on calls is having an excellent reason for calling. I will challenge any rep and say, if you don't know why you're calling someone, you probably shouldn't be calling them, right?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, generally I will have at least loose notes, which we can always get into in more depth when helpful, but I will always have notes for why my particular product or service is relevant to this prospect. Like truly, you should be able to finish the sentence. The reason why I'm calling you is blank, right? It's like whatever it is, growth on the team. You're hiring for someone, like your product helps people onboard. They're trying to, they're based on what you see about them on their LinkedIn profile. You imagine they're focused on this, right? Mm-hmm. I think that having a really strong reason for calling helps make that initial fear of like, oh my goodness, this person picked up, be very natural. Where it's like, oh, hey Eric, like, yeah, no, I'm catching you out of the blue. Boom. Reason for my call is X, right? Yeah. So that I just think is so impactful. Of course, I will say, I think part of the beauty of cold calling and part of what what you can love and hate about it is you are extremely present. There are a few other things in life that are going to force you to be as present as being on a cold call, because you experience the highest of highs and lowest of lows on those phones.
Yeah.
But it's generally speaking pretty exciting. And it's definitely a rush, right? And like booking a meeting, man, having booked meetings and closed deals, don't get me wrong, love closing deals, but whew, there is a certain rush to being on a call and booking a meeting live.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing like it, man. And I'll add to that, like, nothing like it on like a Monday or a Friday, especially, where you're just like, oh, yeah.
Well, especially if you get a couple going, that's one thing, just as we're still on mindset. Something that helped me as an SDR, just like take my dial blocks to the next level. And maybe I shouldn't be admitting this, but when I was earlier in my SDR career, I might book a meeting on the phones and be like, boop, my work for the day, like I'm crushing it, and then I might take a little bit of time to like celebrate and like da-da-da-da-da. I still think it's important to celebrate the little wins. Absolutely. But wow, if you book a meeting, call that next person because your confidence
Yeah.
is sky high. And that's how you can turn like 1 meeting days into 2, 3, 4, 5 meeting days. Like I remember there was a call block where my most successful call block by far, I booked 5 meetings in the span of 30 minutes. Now I will be clear, I got very lucky. It's rare to get 5 pickups in an entire day. I
Right.
got that in a half an hour. But wow, by the third pickup and by the third meeting I booked, I was like, is someone messing with me? Like, and what have I been doing wrong my whole life? Like, this is
Right.
so easy. Now, of course, my confidence was extremely high because I was riding that wave, right? And it also allows you, if you really get into the weeds, to disqualify people and be like, oh, actually, Eric, you know what you mentioned, like, no, we don't do that, but I'll bear that in mind if we do in the future. And you feel much more comfortable telling people no, which of course ironically sometimes makes people be like, well, actually I would be interested in how you can do this, right? It's
Yep.
just super, super interesting as opposed to being on the flip side where you have commission breath, you really need a meeting because you're close to quota and you're like, hey Eric, so can we do this if did it, it's just totally different perspective. But
Yeah.
I'll say that all to say mindset. I, I think most people understate mindset and its impact on the calls you make.
100%. And I think that that is, we'll see what else comes up from this episode, but I think that that is like the most important nugget that has come out of here. And it really is, man. Like I've had reps where they're making calls and they're on fire and exactly they want to stop, but it's that sports mentality where you're like, if you're playing basketball and you're making buckets, you're going to be making more buckets. I've actually pulled reps off the phone and been like, hey, like come back tomorrow ready and fresh for it, who are just getting pounded on the phone, right? The complete flip of that, which is just like if your mindset isn't there, if you can't be excited and bring that to the prospect, there's
Yeah.
no way that somebody you're calling and interrupting their day is going to be excited. So bring that and make it be known through the phone how you feel, how that value is, and like they're probably going to be 60% of whatever you are or less. So
Yeah.
if you're coming in at 50%, they're in the negatives, right? So I totally agree. All right, let's get to the tactical stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about this, how are you structuring your cold calls? Let's give kind of the diagnoses of what makes up an effective one.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that there's a variety of ways to approach this. I'll say generally what I've found most impactful is, of course, some sort of an opener, and we can kind of go like little by little, right? I am big on permission-based openers, so I know that might be, people may have problems with that, but generally speaking, permission-based opener followed by an explanation for the reason for my call, right? Like, hey, reason why I'm reaching out is noticed over at XYZ company, your sales team's grown 30%. As a result, I thought that, ensuring new reps could onboard quickly and easily is top of mind and thought XYZ company might be on your radar, right?
Yep.
Having a reason for calling, very important. And then asking generally speaking, asking if the company's on their radar and how familiar they are with your company.
Yep.
Typically people are going to say like, no, I'm not super familiar. Or they might say, yeah, I think you guys do XYZ. Regardless, it's an opening for you to then actually talk a little bit about the problems that you solve. I think sometimes people jump too quickly to the pitch. Generally speaking, like it goes reason for call, and then framing the problems that you solve and saying like, hey, how does that resonate with you, Eric?
Yep.
Or how does that align with the challenges you're experiencing in your role? Again, because you want to make sure before pitching that you have an understanding of what is it that this person actually cares about, right? If I'm pitching, your product might do 10 things and maybe you can solve the problems that your prospect has, but if you're focusing on the wrong ones, it's not going to land. So
Yep.
aligning on the problems, and then finally, of course, pitching, I think is the most important thing. So, and then after, of course, pitching, you want to close for the meeting. So if I had to kind of like take a step back and re-break this down, I'd say number one, permission-based opener. Number two, reason for calling. Number three, framing the problem that your company solves. Number four, pitch or value prop. And then number five, close for the meeting.
Yep.
What I will say is, when I was an SDR and still as an AE, my most successful calls are kind of in that 4 to 5 minute window. I find if I'm talking for more than 5 minutes, I'm probably overselling the meeting, And if I'm talking for under 4 minutes, still can be successful. Like, definitely can still book meetings, but you are banking a little bit on, you want to get those meetings turned around and have them meet with you as quickly as possible, because you probably haven't dived super in depth into the problems that they're facing.
Yeah.
It might just be like, hey, I can't talk now. Let's talk another time. And then you use that as an excuse to book the meeting. So again, it's not to say that you can't have successful calls that are over 10 minutes, then you don't have successful calls that are under 4 minutes. But my sweet spot's been that 4 to 5 minute range. What about you? Like, what do you think of when you think about like what is a great call that you have either made or received looked like?
Yeah, I would totally agree with a lot of what you're saying. To be clear, have been more successful when it comes to non-permission based openers. So, you know,
Ooh.
you kind of got to like, it all depends on company and product and
Yeah.
familiarity and like there's so many different variables to like add into there. So I
Yeah.
think you just need to like as a rep find what works for you. I know permission-based openers are like the hot thing right now, and there is statistics behind it, but you know, unfortunately, I'm kind of like a pitch slapper, and I'm getting in there. So mine is a little bit different. What I will say, some things that I would ask add on there would be like reference selling, right? Adding in a little bit of context of like finding some companies that are similar to the prospect that I'm reaching out to, so that I can give that like verification, because a lot of these folks in the industries, obviously they know their competitors, they might know people at the competitors, so they can like verify. I think that does like a whole lot to give credibility to what you're doing. The other thing that was actually interesting that you brought up here was like about talk time. And
Right.
actually from the leader perspective, right? As I'm like have an SDR team or an AE team, a lot of leaders like to say like, oh, just make more calls or like, whatever, and use that as the metric. Like, hey, you should be making X amount of calls a week. I just think that is so like useless, because if they're hitting nobody, right? Like there's nothing to be known there. So this is kind of like a step upwards, but if you're trying to like throw a metric up for yourself, or you're a leader that's trying to like index on your team, I always recommend looking at the average amount of talk time that somebody has for their for their cold calls, because I think that just as you said, like 4 or 5 minutes, whatever. If you're setting a metric, it should be like how many conversations are they actually having, and how long are those conversations going for?
Yeah.
Because like what you're always trying to do is optimize for results. And so if you go one step beyond like, okay, you did the bare minimum and you like made these calls, that's a metric you should be looking at. Like if they're not
Yeah.
making enough calls, they should be making more calls. But really getting to that talk time, because that's just one step closer to understand like, is this going to convert or not? Like what do I have to teach to in order to make you more effective? Like when you have shots on goal, are you actually making them, right? And so I think that is super important. Um, I would say though, like the rest of what you said is pretty much in line with what I'm thinking. I'm curious, like when it comes to like personalization for your cold calls, like
Yeah.
what are you doing? What type of research are you looking into? Are you doing it on like an account level, on a personal
Yeah.
level, title level?
Yeah.
Walk me through.
I would say definitely. I mean, I think you could make an argument that all three are important. I kind of go back to the way that I was trained, which is the 3 by 3 metrics that I
Yep.
got, when I was at Gong, which is essentially trying to find three relevant pieces of information about your prospect within 3 minutes of researching them. To be clear, you're not always going to find three pieces of information. The more personalized you can be, the better, right? If I can say like your company's facing a problem in your role. I imagine that you specifically are facing this problem, and it looks like you have familiarity with this because of XYZ thing I've seen on your profile. Like, that is ideal, right? Like at Gong, if I was talking to someone who maybe their account team, maybe their sales team was growing and they had hiring on their team, so I imagine they're focused on, ramping up new hires, and they're a VP of sales who says in their LinkedIn bio, like, I love making reps exceed expectations and become the best version of themselves. Like, that is all gold I can use. That's not always going to be the case. But that's why, at a minimum, being able to identify company-wide metrics and then say, like, hey, Eric, as a noticed your company, sales team at your company has grown by 30% over the past 6 months. As CRO, I imagine ensuring those new reps are ramping as quickly and as quickly as possible and making the most out of reps in seat is top of mind. And as a result, .Gong might be on your radar. Like that, to me, is still better than nothing, right? I think so often people say like, hey, I'm calling from like XYZ company, you're VP of sales, and so my company helps da 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 da. It's like, no, what do you imagine they're facing, right? And like, I am very deliberate with the language that I use, where it's like, as VP of sales, as a founder, as XYZ, I imagine you're focused on XYZ. Give them the space to correct you, right? Like some CROs are focused on ramping new hires. Some don't care at all, and they just want to make sure that the reps in seat are closing deals. Others really care about like win percentages and why are deals falling out at the last minute, right? It's like, give them the space to tell you what's wrong. If you say like, I know this, I know, you don't, right? And that can come off as like very unprofessional and under-researched and uneducated for that prospect.
Yep. I think you kind of made me think of two different things here. The first is like, you should be making those assumptions, right? Like, but you should put it as an assumption. Hey, I saw this, which makes me think this, right? Yeah. And I think that that's really important because it shows that your research and it shows that like you understand the business. You might not understand their business, but you understand the market and what they could be up against, right? And leave it open, leave the door open for them to reframe what their priorities are. Yeah. The second aspect to this, and this was something I was running a little bit ago, like a lot of this account research can also be automated, right? Like we were going after a bunch of like public companies for one of the companies that I was like working with. And what we were able to do is like take Clay and scrape through their 10Ks, right? Which is like a publicly available document that companies have to put out and it puts their priorities and blah, 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 blah. Well, at these companies, like every single purchase that they make, every single decision is against those priorities. So the only way that it's going to sell up the chain is if it's fulfilling one of the priorities that they put in the 10K. So what we were able to do is scrape the 10Ks, find out what those priorities were. Did it, relate in some small way to our product? And then reach out to those executives and say like, hey, listen, I know that you're focused on, retention. I know you're focused on, like new pipeline growth. And that's why I reached out, right? And it's irrefutable. It's in the public view. And if you can connect those dots to say like, okay, this is why I reached out because you literally said this is what we're doing, and you can connect those together. It's like part of the challenger sale, right? It's like, how do you take that like competitive insight and put that directly into your value statement? Like, and again, that instance only works for like a public company, but there's tons of stuff that you can do, whether it's manual research or automated research, to find out what these things are, right?
Yeah. No, it's so true. And again, I think that's the thing is, I would argue most people don't look thoughtfully enough. And it's not to say that you have to be a sleuth and like spend hours doing these things. Now, like back in my day, I only had ChatGPT like towards the end of my SDR time, right? I think that if you you can find a lot of information in significantly less than 5 minutes, right?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. And you mentioned quite a few, and another one that just popped into my head is like job descriptions, right? It's not just like, as you mentioned, like job growth or like individual headcount growth within a specific functional group, but it's like, okay, look at a job description and see like what they're hiring for. Clearly they're willing to pay somebody a full salary plus benefits plus blah, 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 blah to fulfill this particular need. If you can find that information, and again, like I've done this through Clay, but you can use it any kind of automation software, but scrape that information and say like, oh, I see this probably means this. And it doesn't mean that your assumption has to be right. It just is an assumption, and you can ask those open-ended questions to the person on that call to get, what is actually top of mind, even if you're a little bit off. Yeah. But, the thing that we get stopped at every single turn, you could be as researched as possible. You can, do all the homework. You can be in the right mindset, but inevitably there are objections.
Yep.
I'd love to go through like, what are some of the top objections you get, and how do you handle those?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and I think main objections that I get is often like, number one, now's not a good time, right? Most people just want to get out of the call itself, and yeah, in terms of objections, like, now's not a good time, send me an email, or we already have someone who does this, or like, we already have a solution in place, right? And I think that generally I have like a high level framework for how to deal with any objection, which a little bit, maybe a silly acronym, but something that like has always helped me is ASMR, always, soften, mirror, reverse. And this sounds obvious, and am I using A as always so I can make it into a more clever acronym? Absolutely. But it's really soften, mirror, reverse, right? So generally we want to make sure that the prospect feels heard. So like, soften it, like, hey, completely understand, Eric. Mirror back what they're saying, is like, sounds like not, now's not a really good time to chat. Reverse, when would be a better time to connect, right? Like, I will say I am permission based in my openers, but I would like to think tenacious when I'm on the phone. So if you say like, hey, now's not a good time, I'm not being like, oh, okay. I'm saying, hey, no worries. Like, when would be a better time to connect? If you you say like, next week, perfect. Hey, does a particular day of the work, does a particular day of the week work best for you? Tuesdays. Okay, perfect. Mornings or afternoons? Mornings. Okay. How does 10 a.m. next Tuesday look? Yeah, sounds great. I know some people are like, okay, I'm going to put a note in my calendar and I'm going to like call them back. I'm not doing that. I am sending them an invite, and then I'm sending them an invite, and I'm heavily implying, and then I'm going to be following up as if it is like a true meeting. And I cannot tell you how many additional meetings I booked as an SDR, even now as an AE, because of that type of approach, right? Yeah. And so, I think that it's just important to like bet on yourself, right? And don't let yourself get overly rattled by objections. I think that there's a general rule, and I say I don't always do this. I think most people would be like, hey, give yourself 3 objections on the phone before like you let the prospect off the hook. I think that's like best practice. I will say, generally speaking, after 2, it's like pretty clear that they're not down. So I think like be thoughtful about things.
Yeah.
But I personally, I think shoot for 3. Normally, if people reject it twice, okay, like let sleeping dogs lie, right? But what about you? What do you like to do in terms of like general approach? And do you have any like go-to objection handles for some of the most common objections that we're talking about here?
Totally. And I love that you said the amount of objections, because we actually, so for a little context, like one of the teams that I was running, leadership gave me the ability to like give spiffs out, right? So for like certain call metrics or whatever, like most calls before 10 a.m. or like this, that, or the other, right? Like to just like incentivize the process as well as the outcome, right? Because for me, it's like, we need meetings that are creating revenue. Like that's the outcome. And then you can, put a front end spiff that says like, hey, are you doing the activities that I know are going to make you successful? And one of the ones was like, who has the most calls with 2 or more objections, right? Oh. And so it'll be like, all right, you have to like post your call up, and it was like, yep, I pushed, and I just like didn't get it. They didn't have to book it, or they could book it, or it wasn't booked, but like, how many did you push? So I love that you said that, because it was something that I was like, you know what, this is important to not just, lie down and take it as it is. But my framework has always been something where it's like, that's the reason I called, right? Okay, like, hey, just, I don't have time right now. Well, that's the reason I called. I just wanted to grab you. And again, this kind of goes towards my like bowling over
Yep.
technique, but it's like that's the reason I called. I really want to get in front of you because like I know that you don't have time to read an email. I know you don't have a time to get on like a discovery call without any sort of context. I really wanted to get this in front of you, see if it was something that would be interesting, and then we can take it from there. I figured that 30 seconds right now is going to be better than me long dragging out a bunch of emails, calls, and LinkedIn's, right? Same kind of thing for like, send me an email kind of is the same kind of thing. We already use somebody, right? That's the reason I called. I noticed that folks who are using X company typically, they like these aspects, but there are these, one or two things that they can't get over or stopping their workflow or blah, 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 blah. I would love to just see how we can like fit into, the matrix that you have in your tech stack to be able to overcome that and make it not as much of a stopping block, right? And so like agreeing with them that yes, like again, like to the first section, like I know that I am interrupting you, but I am interrupting you with a purpose, and it's because I think that, you're unfulfilled in some way that my product can do. And it's also important to know the difference between like smoke screen objections and like real objections, right? So like the smoke screen objection would be like, I don't have time right now. Like, then why'd you pick up the phone, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have time. You have some time. You
Yeah.
have me on the phone. Like, let's just do this. And then the other objections, which are just like, yeah, I use a competitor and we just renewed with them last month, right? It's like, sure, like you could get some time on the calendar with them. And like, if you can, still go for it because like you want to be top of mind, right? They're probably going to end up, even if you get a meeting, you'll show them, they'll be in a nurture sequence, there'll be a note in Salesforce of follow up with them in, 9 months or whatever. So it's still worth pursuing that, but understanding that like there are differences of like, you have inconvenienced me and like I don't actually have a need, right? And so it really comes down to the EQ of each individual rep to be able to understand like what kind of pushback is this and should I be pursuing this to the nth degree? And that just comes from I think experience and practice and really just like a bunch of calls, right?
Yeah.
So I think I think the more and like I guess this is like for leaders or whatever, but like the earlier you get on the phone, if you're a new rep, like the
Yeah.
better off you're going to be. I always think like if you're the first day on the job, like you should just start making cold calls. It doesn't even like just take the accounts in the system that are marked junk,
Yeah.
right? And just like you're never going to sell them and just get people on the phone and just try to pitch them, right? Like it's like when you get over that initial discomfort and
Yeah.
you're going to hear a lot of objections because it's like junk accounts,
Yeah.
you're going to feel so much more confident,
Yeah.
right? All right. I think that that's pretty good. I think that we can move on to like the sales that doesn't scale.
Mhm.
So I always really like this one
Mhm.
because we can just go through some of the more ridiculous things. And honestly, like there's nothing better than a ridiculous cold call that goes so sideways and yet still works. So I want to know what is yours, Caspian.
What's funny is this. I wish I had access to this, but this call does live in Gong somewhere. Basically, I cold called this guy, and it was late on a Friday afternoon. And he answered on his Apple Watch, and he was like, clearly, I'll just be very upfront. Clearly, like several beers deep. Answered on his Apple Watch. Was playing water volleyball, which like now again I didn't have video because he was just answering on his Apple Watch, but was playing volleyball in I'm guessing like knee high water. It was like a water volleyball court, which honestly sounds pretty fun. Like difficult but fun. And Man, I don't know. I'm revealing a lot of stuff here. He basically said, uh, he he basically said if I sent him some wine that he would take a meeting. And you know what? I had a little bit of budget, and the Sendoso, there was an option to send some wine, and he was of age, and this was all above board, and it was within my gifting budget for the remainder of the month, and so I got him. I wound up sending it that afternoon. I sent him an email right after we spoke, and then I followed up with him. You better believe I followed up with him again Monday morning to say, hey, confirming the timing. I think I booked the meeting for like the Wednesday.
Yeah.
Shared the receipt of what I sent, the timing of when it was going to be, and made sure to continue to follow up before that meeting came to fruition. And he showed. And that, I just remember thinking, like, I just was, that's like definitely an example of where like I pushed beyond what was comfortable. Like I could tell this guy was just like trying to relax, like trying to enjoy his weekend. Again, I wasn't sure to what extent, like how seriously he was taking the conversation. But it wound up working out, So that by far is the craziest conversation I've had. What about you? Are you calling people while they're playing volleyball?
Uh, Kind of similar, but
Okay.
before I say that, I feel like if you had that guy in the call, I would have been like, "Yo, I'm gonna get drizzly. Like, I'll restock your party, right? Like, don't wait a day. It's coming right now. What
Right
is
now.
your current address? It sounds like you need a top off, right?"
Honestly, power move. Power move. I didn't think about that. I was a little slow in the uptake, so I was just like,
I love it. I love it. Well, mine is actually somewhat similar. So
yeah.
different sport, but I called this guy back when I was a BDR, and it was his end of. Oh, excuse me, I wasn't a BDR. I was an account executive at this point. So I was calling him, and it was like towards the end of the year. So obviously, it's like pretty slow. I think I had already made my number, and I was like smartly, and I didn't do this every year, but smartly, I was trying to build up some pipeline for like January, right? Because like typically you're just trying to like push everything through to the end of the year, just like make your quota, and then you're like, I hit it, fuck this, like I'm out, right? And so this year I was being smart about it, and I was trying to get some meetings on the calendar so that I wasn't dry for January. And I call this guy, and he picks up, and it's like really windy. And at the time, I was selling like board software, right? So like my ICP, I'm calling like board members, I'm calling like the C-suite, and basically what it would do is like automate their board books so that it wasn't paper. So I call this guy, and it sounds like really windy. And I know what all like C-level people are doing at the end of the year, like they're skiing, right? And so I ask him like he picks up, and I hear it, and I'm like, it's like, what is this about? I was like, well, any fresh powder? And he was like, what? And I was like, well, I just want to know. It sounds like you're like out on the slopes. And he's like, how'd you know that? I was like, it's windy, and like, honestly, man, like I know where board members are dead to rights at the end of the year. Like you're out skiing. And he just like laughs, and he's like, yeah, I am. Like, what do you want? And I was like, hey, like, this is a sales call, and I just wanted to talk to you for a little bit, but I understand you're on vacation, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. It was like, by the way, where are you? And so he's like, oh, I'm, out in, I forget, whatever, Park City, or. So I'm out in Park City, and I'm on the lift. You got 2 minutes until I touch down at the top. Like, I'll listen for that long. So I quickly look up Park City trails, and I was like, hey man, like the reason I'm calling is it's the end of the year. I know you have a board meeting that's coming up. These quarterly, like it's coming up. You're taking a cold call on the lift, and I really respect that. What if I said that like I could get you a board book in your hand so that when you go up, and I forget like one of the trails, I looked up the trail map, and I was like, what if I said that when you get on the next lift, you could be reviewing the board book in preparation for that board meeting, and so that you can be ready. And I know you can't be lugging around that 100-page paper or classic board book. You're not going to be doing that there. So if you're willing to take some calls, wouldn't you be willing to review the minutes and all the governance and, all the proposed changes? And he laughed and he was like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to do that, but like, that's pretty compelling. And this was just like a funny conversation. So like, let's book a meeting. And he tried to push it for January. And I was like, hey man, it'd be great if I could get like a meeting for the end of the year. I'd love it so that we can do it pre-board meeting in order for you to like bring this up as a potential solution. That way, for after the first quarter, you can bring that through. And so he took the meeting, like it was like, right before the new year and everything. So I got my meeting and it was actually the first deal that came in the first quarter. And so the side note to that, right, is that I learned from that particular call that like anytime I was going out to like Tahoe or Colorado or whatever to go snowboarding myself, I started chatting up every single person on every lift, especially around those times, because you'd be so surprised. Now, that was my ICP, but you'd be so surprised at how many of those people are like wheeling and dealing and whatever. And you can talk about it, and a lift is essentially an elevator pitch. You're just going like this versus this. And just to be able to like talk to somebody, like talk about their problems, hey, I got a solution. And I actually closed more deals because of that. And the beautiful thing is like, if you get some of those deals while you're on vacation, depending on the policies of the company, sometimes you can get like a dinner that is expensed, or one time I got a trip that was expensed because I got a meeting at a dinner of somebody I met at the lift while I was still in the city. So it was kind of perfect. But yeah, that's mine. It was a funny conversation, but funny they're both sports related, right?
Yep. No, that's badass, man. And you mentioned like closing deals. Okay, what are you? Let's get a little tactical.
Yeah.
Days of the week, like what's working for you, or what have you seen working, or what would you recommend someone do, like to book another meeting this week on the phone?
Yeah. Recommendation number one is like, if you're not getting connections, right, get some sort of parallel dialer, right? I'm working with a company who I think Apollo just released a parallel dialer, so you can use that. I know, and that team is pretty small. Some of the teams that are larger, I definitely recommend like Nooks. I've heard just like great things, and I've used it before to get more, again, shots on goal. When it comes to the preparation for those calls, you can always do, you can do your role plays and everything. I actually had a couple of reps the other day that were using Hyperbound. So it's just like AI that basically you can like put your information in and it will be as rude as you possibly want. And I think that gets you in the mindset of like, not, hey, we're doing a role play, so we're either going to be like absurdly hard or absurdly soft when you're doing the role plays. There's just like, it's hard to get a middle ground, but this did a great job with it. And then I think that another thing that we were employing is like voicemail drops. And so I know a lot of like the power dialers actually have this just for you to like not waste time leaving voicemails, because voicemails are really key, not for them to call you back, but just saying, hey, this is Eric from, whatever company. I'm just calling to point you towards my email that I sent, right?
Yeah.
And you can make those very vague. You don't have to say the person's name, but pushing them towards another piece of content that's serving as your foundation is really great. And I have used the free version of this. I have not used the paid version, but there was a company called Terracotta that you can basically put in your script, and as opposed to making these calls and then clicking it, it will just reach out to these folks and just drop voicemails, because most likely nobody is picking up. So it just drops the voicemails for you without having to put the time. So I know that that's like a little bit of like aren't necessarily making those calls, but I think it's a pretty cool idea to be able to like put those in. But I would definitely recommend for reps, like leave voicemails. Don't leave voicemails expecting a call back. So those are kind of my top ones. What about you?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting on the voicemail drop side of things as well. Mine's pretty straightforward, but like honestly, made a huge difference. Has made a huge difference on my entire career, but as it pertains to booking meetings, and that is two things: the timing of the call. I think people underestimate. Number one, prospects, generally speaking, are more likely to pick up in the first hour or in the last hour of their day. I'm sure there are statistics to support this, but if you don't trust statistics, trust me. In all seriousness, I have always, for whatever reason, had a variety of prospects on the East Coast. When I was really hustling as an SDR, I would wake up, 4:30 to 5 to call people between 5 and 6 a.m. Pacific, so 8 and 9 their time, and then 1 to 2:30 Pacific, that 4 to 5:30 block. Wow, seriously, I have booked an incalculable. Well, that's not actually fair, but I can't calculate the number of meetings I've booked in that time frame. But more impactful than that I don't think enough people know is to call within the last 5 minutes of the bottom or top of the hour. And that, like, if you want to supercharge your pickup rate, and that is because if you're calling someone at like 11:18 a.m., number one, it's not the first or last hour of their day, but number two, like you can still call throughout the day, but I would still recommend within the top 5 minutes of the bottom or top of the hour, because how do people normally block their time? In 30 minute or hour long increments, which means generally speaking, either people are going to be running between meetings, or they might even think that you are their next meeting. Now, again, don't lie and say that you are, but it can be a great reason to be like, hey, no, I'm not, but now that I have you, XYZ thing, right? Or hey, when's a better time to connect? I just think that it is so important to get people on the phone.
Yeah.
And I think that you will have reps who like make, I don't know, still like several tens of dials, but at, between like 11 and 2 p.m. And it's like, that's in the midst of people being in their meetings, especially if you're calling in your own time zone. And it just has never made sense to me. So do yourself a favor, call in the first or last hour of the day. And then if you really want to crush it, top 5 minutes within the bottom or top of the hour.
My brain was also just thinking like, I'd love to see the transition of somebody pretending to be their next call. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
this is Jim from marketing. You know what? I heard about this really interesting product or service, and I really think that we should look at it. But what's crazy is like I've been having some short-term memory loss, so I won't remember this conversation.
Yeah, just setting up all these caveats, being like, oh, this is weird.
Now listen, as long as there's no follow-up questions, this is Jim, right? One thing to add to that though is I think Fridays. A lot of people have talked about this, so I don't know if it's like a hidden gem or whatever. But I always had the most success on Fridays because I think that there's less meetings that are booked on Fridays for people, right? It's like a little bit looser, and people are going into the weekend, so they have this like happier mindset because just as we talked about mindset of the seller themselves, you also want to think of like the prospect, right? And so like you might grab somebody at a great time for you, but if you haven't grabbed them at a great time for them, right, they're going to be in that bad mindset and they're going to be less open to hearing what you have to say. So I always found success on Fridays as my like top day. So
Yeah.
Cool, man. Let's wrap this up. I think we covered a lot of great topics. What are your hot takes of the week?
Yeah, so I didn't know that this was a hot take, but I've spoken to enough people to feel like it is. And it relates to an icebreaker. One of my favorite icebreakers, which might sound odd, is like, what would you rather encounter, a ghost or an alien? Right? Now I know, like, yes, let's put like you believing in ghosts to one side. I'm not saying that I do. I'm not going to comment on like if someone else does. But like just in theory, let's assume everything is real. What's scarier? What would you rather meet? I, for whatever reason, have people say that they would rather meet a ghost because they think that like if they meet an alien, it's going to be like probably the last thing they ever do. My hot take is I would way rather meet an alien than a ghost. Like an alien is a physical being that like at least if it went sideways, like you can like punch an alien. You know what I mean? You can't punch a ghost, or
Yeah.
you could try, but it's gonna go through it. So
Yeah.
I did not know this was a hot take. I did not like until very recently, and I'm super intrigued to hear if I'm alone in this. But wow, I would infinitely, way rather meet an alien than a ghost. Also, ghost implies it has unfinished business. So why would you want to get wrapped up in that?
Yeah, yeah. I was just about to say, I feel like it's because, and I totally agree with the like physical aspect of it. Like,
Yeah,
just like find wherever those soft spots in the alien are, and start
Megan
poking
is
those big ass eyes, right? But
exactly.
like, I think the other aspect of it is you hit the nail on the head, which is ghosts are selfish, right? It's all about the ghost, right? Like there's a ghost in my house. Like I didn't want the ghost here. It's like, oh, like I was like a Civil War guy. Like you're just selfish, right? Like nobody is here for the ghost. It's not like, oh, the ghost just did my laundry. Like he's just like throwing stuff all over the place. It's
He's
just like,
just messing with your.
yeah,
He's just turning your laundry machine on and off.
right. It's like who just ordered 60,000 toilet paper rolls? It's a ghost, like an alien is not doing
By
that.
the way. Yeah.
Versus the alien could have like, like nice intentions, right? Like sometimes it's like to abduct you, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be like, hey, like I want to show you the like secrets of the universe or like whatever. Like
Exactly.
ghosts are out for themselves. And like I totally back you 100%. We've differed on a lot of hot takes here, but you have my full
Well,
support, Caspian.
I appreciate that. That's yes, that is very true. Ghosts are extremely selfish. Aliens, TBD. You
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
But,
It could go either way, right?
okay,
Uh,
what about you? What about you?
yeah. All right. So my hot take, um, I think that and I've done like gardening, like my wife and I have done gardening. Our spot right now doesn't really like allow for it with like enough open space, but like we did some gardening back at our old place in San Francisco. Like I've done gardening growing up with my mom and everything, and grown a whole ton of vegetables, fruits, vegetables, whatever. I think that after taste testing all those different things, and maybe it's just like I don't have a green thumb or whatever, but like I think the only thing worth growing in a personal garden is tomatoes. Like everything else, I've tried out like potatoes, onions, weird things to grow. I know, corn, hot peppers, like just like everything.
Yeah.
Herbs, right? Like I was actually telling Swapna about this like before I went on. I was like, I'm gonna do this, and she like got really agitated. She's like, herbs, they're like when they're fresh, they're so good. No,
Mm.
it's like minimal difference off of what you get at the store, but tomatoes are like night and day. So I'm like, if I have a garden, all it's going to be is tomatoes because I think that the delta between it, you'll really see it there, and it's like you have a fresh tomato, it's great. You have a store-bought tomato, like 99% of the time, it sucks, and I think that's the only thing worth growing. So people
Interesting.
out there, let me know what you think. I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of hate on that of like, like these prize cucumber growers and like, the
Mm.
pumpkin
Nope.
fiends and
It's all.
whatever.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I don't know. What do you think of it, Cassian? Do you have a stance on gardening?
I mean, I do. I would. I've never gardened. At least not well. My bias. I do love fruit, specifically apples. So I would love to have just like so many apple trees. What I will say that was on the tomato side of things. One of the best like little phrases that I know is the difference between knowledge and wisdom is knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad, right? And so that's when you were saying tomatoes, I was like, you know what? The perfect time to drop a little
I love
tomato
it.
phrase, you know?
Drop that knowledge. You can have your apple core tree that just produces cores, and you'll be a happy man, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's I actually convinced someone to eat an apple core this week, and they were pleasantly surprised by it. So, for you listeners out there, please try an apple core this week and tell me on a scale of amazing to incredible how it was.
I feel like, yeah, we should put that in the poll at the end of this. And also, for all of you that have been listening to the other episodes, go vote in those polls because those will, push us to what we should cover, what we should dig into more. So maybe there will be a Apple Core poll there, maybe something else. But yeah, I think hopefully we gave you a lot of information in this episode that you can use tomorrow to make yourself better. Cold calling, it's super hard. It's really challenging, I think, especially on that mindset to come in every day ready to crank out those calls. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel. And as Caspian said earlier, like, there's nothing better than getting a booking on a cold call. So, if nothing else, do it for that and the immediate results. So, really thank you everybody for listening to episode 3. Next week we are covering LinkedIn messaging, which I know is actually from our past polls, something that folks wanted to see. So we're really excited to drop into kind of the third channel of standard outreach. Thanks for listening to this, and like and subscribe. Caspian, send us off.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We only get better, so please give us feedback. What did you like? What did you not like? What were you lukewarm to? What were you warm to? What were you Luke to? No, what were you cold to? Appreciate everyone listening as always, and keep crushing it, y'all. Let us know what works, what didn't, and we'll see you all in the not too distant future.